call to order the May meeting for the Planning Agency. If everyone would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Do we have an applicant from Royal Farms?
Yes. Neil Stein representing the applicant. Dan Glass is our engineer from Robert Blue Consulting Engineers. We are here for recommendation for conditional preliminary and final subdivision and land development approval. As you've seen this project several times before, I'll remind you that we've obtained our zoning approval. We've gone through several rounds of reviews. We've whittled down the review comments to, I think, the last remaining few, although I'll let Lonnie speak to that. I think the only review letter we haven't yet received is to our traffic study. We've been through one round of reviews and submitted revisions. We expect that, I think, by the end of the week. That's what I heard anyway, by the end of the week. But we're confident we can satisfy any remaining comments there as well. So that's it for an introduction. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay, we'll start with Lonnie. Lonnie?
Was the traffic report submitted this afternoon? Last night's council meeting, there was a council's impression that traffic report was going to be submitted to the traffic consultant this afternoon.
I think it already was.
It was? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't have any comments. We've been through this for months now. All the issues have been resolved for engineering purposes.
There's nothing outstanding from any of the consultant standpoint?
I don't believe so, no.
So I know the only thing is they're still working out options with sewer.
Still working out options for
Yeah,
sewer. I think
there's
we have some 2 or 3 good alternatives.
Yeah, and then the traffic. Everything else is pretty clean.
Okay.
And I have those review letters here if anybody wants them.
Yeah, you sent it.
Yeah.
Okay. Brittany?
I have no question.
Thank you. Tony?
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay. Vernon?
I don't have any questions.
Monica?
Are you proposing more parking spaces than allowed for there was something in here about parking.
There was a discrepancy between the number, between 62
Yeah,
and
that,
60.
that,
We have 62 proposed, it just said it said on one part of the plan 60. But there's 62 bases proposed.
and what about the issues with the grass at the ends of the parking areas?
So we have the one right here, and then right here for grass areas. We have some discussion about providing it to get down to 60 spaces instead of 62 right here, but we wouldn't be able to put tall, any trees that would have to be low to the ground plantings.
Okay, so that's one of the waivers you're asking for.
Yes.
I don't have any other questions.
Okay, thank you.
No questions.
Greg?
I don't have any questions.
Okay. Any other comments?
No, I'm good.
Okay. So the waiver being requested is for green space, to provide green space, but not to provide trees?
Yes, so we have a few waivers that we have
Mhm.
requested in the plan. We can go through them. Basically, the first one is no storm sewers surveyed within outside of 200 feet of the site. Minimum curb radius of commercial is 15 feet.
You want us to go through all the waivers or just the?
No, just the pertinent ones, please.
Okay.
Parking lots with less than 30 spaces shall not have a grade exceeding 5%. Parking lots with more than 30 spaces shall not have a grade exceeding 3%. We have, most of our areas are under 5% throughout the site. It's just we have more than 30 spaces, so we're requesting that relief.
So specifically regarding the green space, if you could focus on that. Because I believe all the other waivers will comply with the consultant recommendations.
That's
Okay.
So it's 518.5H1B, H1D. Raised planter island shall be placed at the end of each row of parking spaces, which begins or terminates at an internal circulation drive. That's the landscape island at the end.
Mhm. And the waiver requested
Yes,
is to provide what?
to provide plantings and not trees. That's
So lower shrubs
Yes.
and not trees.
Yeah, 40 shrubs would be substituted for street trees.
Okay, perfect. Just wanted to make sure the green space was accounted for to help with water runoff, water retention.
Right.
Obviously, there's been problems in the township, there's been problems in these areas, and we want to make sure we're mitigating
Sure.
that up front.
Understood.
Okay, thank you. So the remaining reports are the traffic report and the sanitation sewer options. They're outstanding, and for both of them, you will comply with the recommendation of the consultants.
Yeah, obviously, we haven't seen the letters yet, but we're confident we
Just-
can comply.
Exactly, and we haven't either, so we certainly can't grant relief there. Just making sure. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the waivers.
The application as submitted with, will comply with all consultant recommendations, including traffic report and sewer options. Do we have a second? Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Thank you for taking us first.
You need anything? Which one do you want? Keep them.
Your call.
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
Which one do you want?
From KDP.
As a representative from Keystone?
Yes. I'm Rob Gunlock, attorney for the applicant. Here with me tonight is Rich Gottlieb from Keystone, principal, Kevin Tatlow from Bowler Engineering, Matt Hammond, traffic engineer from Traffic Planning and Design, and Ben Wright, the project architect from Bernardo. What's that? Bernardo. Got it. Thank you. So we're here tonight to talk about what's designated as 502 West Germantown Pike, the large office building in the center of the Plymouth Meeting Mall. And assume generally you're all familiar with the office building and relatively the back center of the mall. The building once fully occupied for offices many years back. It contains approximately 174,000 square feet. Keystone purchased the building approximately 7 years ago and immediately implemented marketing attempts to re-let up the building. Unfortunately, they were not successful and the building has sat there vacant. We began discussions with council more than a year ago about redevelopment opportunities for the building. We also discussed with you as well. And after further discussions, the township did pass an ordinance amendment that allows the redevelopment of an office building such as this one for apartments. So they passed that to allow that by conditional use with a cap of 150 units of a mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms, with 2 bedrooms comprising no more than 50% and certain amenity space be provided throughout the building. As a result of passage of that ordinance, Keystone moved forward to file a conditional use application and also a land development application. The land development application is very limited because there's very limited improvements proposed as part of the redevelopment, but there are some exterior improvements in the form of pedestrian connectivity that are being proposed that we can talk a little bit about tonight, but more so when we come back in front of you for the land development application. So tonight, we're just here as to the use, which is the proposed redevelopment of the office building for apartments. We have a hearing coming up. If that is passed, then we'd be back in front of you on the land development plans and can talk in more detail about connectivity and sidewalks and handicap ramps. We're going to go over a little bit about that with you tonight, but rolling up our sleeves and getting down to those details will come if and when we obtain our conditional use approval for the actual use itself. So what I'd like to do, Mr. Chairman, if we can, is we're going to just walk through a quick PowerPoint to orient everybody.
Okay.
We don't have the PowerPoint equipment, but we actually printed them out, so we'll just do an old school and we'll
Sure.
page through them with you.
Absolutely.
You have the copies, Jenna? This is Jenna Kasman from my office as well, who's working on the project and
Thank you.
Of course.
put together a very nice PowerPoint with all kinds of sound and everything. And, would have been spectacular, but this will work nonetheless. So we'll just page through after everybody gets it, and then I'm going to just informally, Mr. Chairman, call up the engineer, the traffic engineer, the architect, as we go through the sections to address any questions that you have or comments regarding it, and then we can go through the review letters. So just getting to page 3 is just who the applicant is. They're affiliated with Keystone Property Group. The property is approximately 5 acres and located in the SC Shopping Center District. And the proposed plan is to redevelop the office building for apartments. The next page, the background continued, just references all the documentation we submitted, primarily submitted with the land development application, which can be discussed and reviewed at your next meeting. Next page is project highlights, 150 apartments, a mix of 1 and 2 bedrooms with amenity space for the apartments. There is no outside commercial proposed in the building, so there wouldn't be like a Dunkin' Donuts or a Starbucks on the first floor, just amenities for the residents. The parking here is, per your ordinance, it requires less parking than for the office, so the parking spaces aren't changing outside, but the number that's required changes. This is about Keystone, picture of the office building, and then the next few pages are some projects that Keystone Development via Rich Gottlieb here to my right have developed in the area, Sora West, the Curtis, 1K1, 100 Independence, just to give you a flavor for the type of work that they do throughout the region. The next shot is an aerial of the mall, and to the right center of the page you can see the office building there. The next couple of pages are a little difficult to read, but they just reflect the existing site plan and the site conditions, so you can see the amount of parking that we have around this building. It's quite extensive between the Benihana to the east and the movie theater to the south. Another picture of the existing building. The next set of slides deals with the floor plans and the elevations. Bernardin prepared these, a little photograph of what's out there today. A couple different sides of the property. If you haven't been all the way in the back there, you give you a flavor for what's there, and a little colored site plan showing how we're going to clean up some of that landscaping. The next slide you come to says first floor plan. That just shows you the doors, the front door and the back door, and the amenity space coming through. Security is a big feature in these apartment buildings, and obviously having key fobbed and security systems, no outside vendors in here will help to protect that. We have a sample floor plan showing floors 2nd through 7th, and then another set of floors showing 8th and 9th with amenities scattered throughout the space. The next shows the exterior renderings. A little different than what we submitted with our application. It had balconies on some of the units. After further discussions, Keystone does not recommend or support the balconies. They tend to get cluttered. They tend to have some potential issues with people. Maybe want to light a grill, maybe have a smoke. So we've decided after further discussion to remove the balconies and have a cleaner look on the exterior there, so it does reflect what we're proposing on both sides of the building, and it gives you a shot of the exterior renderings. The fiscal impact was completed by David Babbitt, the land planner on the project, and shows a positive impact to the township and the school district. Also, in the materials you received with the land development application is a lot more backup on the fiscal and all those projections and how they determine the projected number of school-age children. Not in this, but in the materials we gave. Next is the Matt Hammond's traffic study from Traffic Planning and Design. And he's here, and I'm going to have him give a quick summary as to the differential between using the building for office versus 150 apartments. But if you drill through the slides and the data, the net of that is it significantly less trips and less parking are required, which means more parking for others in the center. So if the center is redeveloping the back end, the good news is they'll have more parking for others, particularly when you have an office building. The day parking is filled up and the nights it's empty. Here, it's going to be a little bit of both. Some day, some night parking, depending upon the residence and occupancy, but it's a lot less required parking spaces. After the detailed charts, you see a plan called Site Plan with traffic markups, cropped for better viewing, with red markings all over it. This is Matt Hammond's suggestions, because one of your review letters was improve the pedestrian connectivity back there. And so this is something that we want to let you know is coming, but probably not something that we're getting into the details tonight, but rather with the land development application, handicap ramps, striping out there, something for you all to take a look at and consider. So when we come back on land development plans, you can take a look out there and give some further suggestions, and we can make adjustments and work on those improvements to make it safer and more efficient for pedestrians who are walking through. Last slide is just a picture of the proposed new skin. If you remember that building, or there's photos in here, they have very narrow windows. It's very bright, Rich. They're kind of very narrow windows. It's not the best look. Primarily just a yellow stucco. It's aged. It's functionally obsolete. We're going to reskin this and have a much nicer look back there. More windows for an apartment type of building. So that's a quick presentation. We're prepared to go through the review letters, but before we do, Mr. Chairman, would you like to open up for questions or comments from either the engineer, civil engineer, traffic engineer, architect on anything that you may have seen in the PowerPoint that you want to get some further clarification on?
I'm fairly certain yes to all of the above.
Okay.
In addition to that, if we could start with, I think, recommendations from the consultants. I think that would be a better place to start, and then we'll go through the board, and then questions will occur naturally.
The review letters. Okay. So let's start with Carroll Engineering traffic review letter. I would say Predominantly, all of it is a will comply. We have a few clarification items. Matt, why don't you give a quick clarification on we have the review letters, right?
Sure. Good evening, Matt Hammond, Traffic Planning Design. As Rob had mentioned, there's a number of these comments, granted they're traffic related and fall under the traffic engineer's review. Most, if not all, of the comments are well complies. The first comment is just a clarification, traffic review comment, letter A. Talks about the need for a brief traffic assessment. That traffic assessment was completed in the PowerPoint presentation. There's excerpts from that analysis which is submitted and will be reviewed. But it provides for the information that was being requested by Carol with respect to trip generation, land use code, brief traffic assessment. And it goes on to provide a little bit more information in terms of vehicular and pedestrian related traffic as well. The rest of that, I don't know, Kevin, if I'm saying anything out of turn, but I don't believe there's anything else in this letter that is not will comply, at least for the traffic and the site plan perspective.
Yeah, that's correct.
The Woodrow Associates letter, Kevin, you're here. We've gone through that letter. All of that too, it does reference traffic in there as well, which Matt just touched upon, but is everything else in that letter a will comply?
Yes, that's correct, yeah.
There is some reference to the sewer, which we'll address on the sewer letter, and there's also a reference to environmental sustainability, and certainly that would be further detailed as part of the land development. But Ben, you did take a look at and provide a reply to the question of environmental sustainability there, correct?
Yep.
Do you want to review that with the board as to our position for compliance with that?
First one's community, providing housing within close proximity to health clubs, retail stores, fresh food stores, restaurants, workplaces, walking, and 24-hour environment, improval of community quality life. Second one's reduction of carbon output, reuse of existing steel and concrete building systems, and electrical and plumbing. For construction materials, recycling, the building design includes ample space to accommodate an occupant recycling program. Interior health, all living spaces will have ample natural light, fresh air ventilation, and low VOC materials. And the last one is the redevelopment building will have modern low flow fixtures for water-saving LED light fixtures and new mechanical equipment.
So everything else in there from an architectural and an engineering standpoint is will comply items that would be addressed as part of the land development application. Is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. The last review letter is as to sewer, and we have had discussions, Mr. Chairman, with township staff concerning the sewer. The issue with the sewer here is not treatment, but conveyance from the mall through Arthur's Court and under the railroad tracks. What we have here isn't sewage transmission for 150 apartments. It's the differential between a fully occupied office building at 174,000 square feet and 150 apartment units. And so that's something that the sewer engineer will work with the township sewer engineer on. But we're projecting the differential at somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 gallons per day additional, because the 174,000 square foot office building is approved for, on the DEP schedule, 0.1 gallons or 10 gallons per day per person, and each person is assumed to occupy 100 square feet. It comes out to about 18,000 gallons per day, which this is approved for. The apartments are proposed to consume approximately 19,000 gallons per day, and the differential between the two is about 2,000 gallons per day. So we need to ensure that there is adequate additional conveyance capacity, and we are in the process of installing flow meters at Arthur's Court. We're waiting for the consultant to go out and put them on per township sewer consultant, and we'll see what the results are. We'll have that before you land development. So that was really the main sewer comment, was confirming the conveyance capacity is there for the project. There was also a lighting letter with some, just a handful of minor comments, all of which are, will comply. All that detail will be provided at land development, cut sheets for the exterior lighting of the building. So I would characterize all comments as customary minor land development comments that would all be, all are will comply and would be addressed as part of the land development approval process.
Okay, thank you. Lonnie?
Just a general question, what's Plan B if the flow meters come up with some number that's not conducive to your report?
You're talking about Arthur's Court?
Yes.
Well, I think Mr. Ebert, who's counseling Keystone, and Mr. Mason have had conversations about that, and evidently, from a technical standpoint, there is some options to install some additional or parallel piping. I can't get into all the details, but I was on a call where they spoke in depth about it, and so they will need to work that out, but obviously we have to have the conveyance capacity to move it forward. So we'll likely need, I assume, a planning module exemption of some sort for the additional conveyance capacity, and the township will need to certify that the capacity is there before we can make application for it. So that was their plan B.
Okay. And stormwater management you'll address in the land development stage. Your initial thoughts on that are you can do
Yes.
something around the building and collect the roof drains and things like that?
Kevin, you had an idea about a rain garden there. You want to share that?
Yep, so we're actually removing some parking spaces in the middle of the parking lot to install a small rain garden there. Because I think technically we're under the earth service, we don't need storm management, but we're taking the opportunity to install a small rain garden in the existing parking lot.
That's it, I don't have anything else.
Thank you, sir. Brittany?
I don't have any questions, but I just had a thought maybe regarding more additional for your potential residents. I didn't notice much. I saw like a few little benches on the residents that you had, but it seemed like the indoor amenities, since you're not going to have outside balconies or anything like that.
Yeah.
Do you have any additional green space, or do you have an idea of what those amenities would be?
It's a good comment. I went out there tonight before the meeting, and the landscaping out there is sparse and bad at best. So it does need to be upgraded, Rich, and I think you're prepared to do that. Are you prepared as part of land development to put together a more detailed landscape plan as to those features? Okay.
Yeah, I know it'll come up during land development.
Okay.
Speed
So,
it up.
yeah, it does need it. The plaza, behind or in front of the building, depending where you're standing, just looks tired and needs to be upgraded. So we'll agree as part of the land development to bring forth a detailed landscape plan with photos and
Yeah,
proposals for
maybe
that.
some more amenities for potential residents.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Tony?
Just observations, I guess 4.98 acres and 150 units is in compliance with the apartment zoning and 30 units per acre. Is that how that's determined with that? Is that how Plymouth responded there, Joel?
To me, what's that?
Yeah, is that how they got the number of units there?
Yeah.
And then the fiscal impact analysis, I don't know, it's just an observation, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom breakdown, 75 per. I don't know if you have those things reversed as far as the fiscal impact as far as school district and township. I guess a 2 bedroom would get more income than a 1 bedroom.
In terms of the net, I think it deals with the fact that
Is that the projected revenue, or is that how that works?
yeah, it factors in the school-age children, so that although there's only a handful of school-age children that are projected here, they would, I think, all be in the 2 bedrooms and not the 1 bedrooms, so it comes out of the 2s. If you look at the report itself, is much more complex,
Where do you
but
get this? I'm just curious, from my own knowledge, where do you get that calculation, that information?
that information actually, you're the second person to ask that, because when we went through in the text amendment, he did the study, he cited it, and they wanted some more information, and then he did an additional study looking at not just the Rutgers study that everybody cites, but he pulled apartment buildings from the area here, and he did a detailed, an additional study that was part of the land development application that we included. A demographic analysis he prepared in April. So it's actually pretty interesting. He did a deep dive on some other apartments, so it's in your land development package, yeah.
And that's showing more family-oriented people versus youth?
No, it's showing less children. What he's doing is he's looking at these newer apartment buildings that have been constructed throughout the region here. You see a bunch of them in King of Prussia, for instance, and he did a deep dive comparison of some of the older ones that you might see in Lower Merion that are larger and tend to have more families, more children, than the 1 and 2 bedrooms, new professional kind of modern buildings that have significantly less or no children whatsoever. You might have a father who has the children, on a support agreement where he has them every other weekend, but there's very few, if any, children that are in these 1 and 2 bedrooms that are going to school-age children, going to schools out of these buildings. They might be going from the other spouse's house, but rarely do you see them out of these types of buildings.
That is curious.
Thank you, Tony. Brennan?
I don't have any questions.
Monica?
I'm going to have to recuse myself because of my employer's relationship with TPD.
Understood. Thank you. Michael?
No, no questions.
Greg?
So confirming, there's 225 beds. 75 2 units, 75 1 bed, so 225 beds.
Maybe less. I mean, you could rent a 2-bedroom unit and have your office, and we find that since COVID and people aren't going into the office, they're moving from 1 bedrooms to 2 bedrooms, and so they're taking their second as their office.
Fair enough, but
Yeah.
I don't want to hone in on 150 versus the 225.
Okay.
Parking. Is there going to be any way to isolate parking for this building? Because if you go over there now, Legoland's parking there, Boscov's parking there, there is parking being utilized around that building today.
There is. I'd say in the front of the building where that mall entrance is, that's generally full, but in the back there, when I went tonight, Legoland and Bosco, I mean, it was 40 cars at best and hundreds of spaces, but no, we can't. And the answer, and the reason is there's a cross easement agreement that was put in place 40 plus years ago that talks about a cross easement and mutual sharing of lots. So,
How recent was the traffic study?
Matt, can you address that?
So the traffic study is dated March 9th.
Of
Essentially,
23.
this year, 2023, correct. So it was just a couple months ago, or about 2 months ago at this point. Really what we focused on was the comparison between an office building fully occupied, the amount of traffic that would generate versus the 150 apartment units and how much traffic that would generate. There's a significant difference between the two, whereas the apartments would be projected to generate nearly half of the traffic that an office, fully occupied office that we assumed in our study 165,000 square feet. In actuality, it's about 174. So there's a big difference between the amount of traffic that we generate by the two uses.
In an isolated vacuum, but not in that mall shopping center. Any consideration of traffic flow, way to mitigate traffic coming in through front of Dick's versus maybe using side street?
I mean, we don't control those entrances out there. We own literally the donut, the 5-acre donut in the center. So all that other property is owned by PRE. So we can't make any modifications to their area, we can make modifications to our area, and certainly can support any proposed modifications that they might be making. But we have our footprint.
Yeah, and I think what we tried to do was also, in that one exhibit that was provided in the packet, that kind of gave an idea of our thoughts with respect to how we improve vehicular and pedestrian traffic in and around the proposed building. Not only to help from a traffic flow.
Can you verbalize that? Because we had to have 2 seconds to look at this picture.
Sure. I mean, it's tough to verbalize. I mean, if everyone wants to kind of.
You're talking about the plan with the red marking?
Yeah, the plan with the red marking. So there's a lot of lines on there, a lot of writing. The plan I was working on was much bigger, so it's a little bit easier.
If you go from the back, I think it's like 4 pages from the back. It's got the red, that's it right there.
Yep.
So you'll see, it's really, we try to focus on what can be done that not only benefits the building, but benefits the mall itself, right, through that area. What this markup shows is just various areas where we are looking to update or clean up some of the existing pedestrian facilities, and in some areas we're looking to actually provide additional pedestrian facilities. What we want to do is be able to have a marked and ADA compliant, accessible pedestrian path from the west side to the east side and back and forth, as well as from the building itself to the parking areas just south of the building. Obviously, not all of that property is controlled by Keystone, but I kind of looked at it and just didn't really consider property lines. I looked at it like, what would be a benefit in this area? What are the things that can be done to help improve pedestrian and vehicular flow? Again, not only for the building, but for the mall and the other tenants within the area. So there's a lot of red lines on here. ADA compliant ramps, new crosswalks in certain locations, crosswalks where areas where crosswalks don't exist, ramps where ramps don't exist, stop signs, pavement markings. A lot of it has to do with some of the drive aisles through the area. What I tried to do is make sure that there was at least some demarcation in those drive aisles to kind of show you what lane you're supposed to be in versus somebody else that's passing you, because obviously right now it's free flow. It's a free-for-all. And trying to do that, provide stop sign, provide stop pavement marking, stop bars in certain areas, just to kind of clean that area up to the extent possible.
Given that there will be some kids in the building, we don't know how many, and you don't control the flow of the entrances, is there any special consideration being given for school buses coming in to pick kids up, drop kids off?
I don't know the answer to that, but what I find is that the school buses and school districts will not enter private properties with the school buses to pick up children. So there'd have to obviously be some accommodations with respect to how those children would get to a bus stop off the property or immediately surrounding, or transportation.
So you're saying a school bus can't come into the shop,
No, I'm
into
not
the
saying
center to
they
pick
can't.
kids up?
What I'm saying is that obviously tractor trailers go into the center today to make deliveries, right? So, but they can make deliveries, school buses can likely traverse the property. What I'm saying is that from a school district perspective, my experience has been with school districts, that they will not normally, there's been obviously, exceptions to the rule, but normally will not enter a private property with their school bus.
Yeah, we'll confirm that, but that's our understanding as well, that the school district would never have the bus enter this mall. I mean, that would be, by the time you got into the mall, all the way to the back of the mall, picked up or dropped off children, then went back through the mall and out, you would consume a significant amount of time on that. So we'll confirm that for you, but we understand that they will not be traversing in and out of the mall property.
Okay. And there's going to be no retail on the first floor of this building?
Yep.
Okay. That's all I have.
Okay. So if I'm understanding correctly, you're saying the study regarding occupancy was based off of King of Prussia?
No, he did that was just one of the areas that
That's
he
fine.
was looking at, but he did a deep dive
Right.
with his reports that he did as part of the fiscal, and then he did further demographic backup because he was requested by, I think, somebody on township staff for additional information. So that was all provided to you as part of the land development application, and David will be here at the next, we can bring him to the next meeting, but stated April 23rd, and he looked at some other properties throughout White Marsh. Looked at Conshohocken, here's one Riverwalk Apartments. He just looked at a number of other projects and was able to identify the number of school-age children that were in those projects.
And was Sussex Square, Park, Plymouth Hills, and Place One included in that study?
I'd have to look at that and ask David that question. What were the ones that you wanted to know about?
All the regional ones, Sussex Square, Park, Plymouth
Sussex
Hills,
Square, okay.
Place One,
Place
all
One.
within proximity of the mall.
Sussex Square, Place One, and how old are those?
Some of them are older, absolutely.
Yeah.
But that's where people live in many cases to bring their kids to the township schools.
Okay, and I bet.
And to your example earlier, where there may be a divorced parent, many times one parent will have the house, one
Okay.
parent will get an apartment in the township,
Okay,
so that the child can go to the school regardless.
yeah,
So then the child can be going from either point. Granted, that's an existing child, already part of the school. There's other cases where people are moving into the township from other districts. We do have a very good school district,
yeah.
so that they can partake of this, especially if they're coming from an area of a not so good school district.
Yeah.
So that's occurring.
I got you. Well, look, all I can tell you is that the data that Mr. Babbitt identified, and he has quite significant experience in doing these
Certainly does.
fiscal analysis, determined that, in his professional opinion, there would be no more than, I think it was 11 in the report, school-age children that would be in this building, and based upon some of the data, but in his opinion, it's going to even be less than that. But we can't design a building to prohibit or prevent children
Absolutely.
in there. And if somebody moves in there and pays what are pretty significant rents for very small units, they have the right then to access the school district.
Absolutely.
What was Sussex Square, Place One, and
Plymouth Hill is a condominium. Plymouth Hill, this is what you mentioned, right?
Yes, sir.
Plymouth Hill condos.
Yeah.
that's a condo or a rental?
Plymouth Hill is a condominium.
Okay.
Place One is a high-rise apartment.
So we can check Place One and Sussex Square's apartments too?
Sussex Square.
Yeah.
And they're both in the township?
Yes.
Okay.
And
Okay, we'll take a look at those, and then he's got data, if not in here, he's got some additional data on a few of the newer ones that were built, like in Ballackinwood, Western Development built one there, and in King of Prussia, there's a couple new ones there that are very similar to the size of the units and the type of the amenities that this one would have. So we'll get some more data for you, Mr. Chairman.
and the Park, most recent apartments there. They're similar in that they abut two streets, and the fear is that caused significant traffic and water issues in the township for quite a while, and some would even argue that traffic issues are continuing. And part of the issues there are they have two public-facing streets. There's nowhere else to go. You're either on Plymouth Road or you're on Butler Pike. Those are the choices because of that's there. In your case, it's going through Hickory or going through Germantown. There's nowhere
Yeah.
else to go.
Nowhere else to go. We would just submit to you that the differential is this is not a new apartment building. We're proposing the redevelopment of an existing building that I think Matt's data clearly shows would generate significantly more traffic during peak hours with a full-on office building than this.
Agreed. But at the same time, if you could have a full-on office building, it would already be populated.
It would be.
Okay.
If AT&T
So-
called us tomorrow, you wouldn't see us again. We put them in 174,000 square feet, but unfortunately,
Exactly right.
he's pretty good at marketing office buildings, and I think Rich,
I have no doubt.
it's not something you gave up on easy, but trying to redevelop, and if you drive back there, in fairness, Mr. Chairman, it doesn't look great back there now, and we think this will
I'm aware.
hopefully help them all out as well by getting people in there at night and back there and more activity, so.
And to that point, we do have Park, which is a recent addition. We do have those other places I've mentioned where people already live in proximity to the mall. So that already exists.
Yep.
So bringing something else in may or may not help, but that already exists. If that were going to help the mall, is my point. And then you also raised a good issue around how there's other things around the mall and other issues. What is the vision for the mall, because there are 9 parcels, is my understanding. And Lonnie or Joel, please correct me if I'm wrong. There's 9 parcels that make up the mall. Some of them have this ability to try to move towards the 150 apartments. Others could be joined to move towards the 150 apartments. Without a clear vision, without an understanding of how we see the mall moving forward, I'm very hesitant to create a situation that's going to cause problems in the township, potential problems with sewage. Even if we address everything perfectly with this one building, if others come in behind that, that's going to cause issues for existing residents who are in Arthur's Court, who are further downstream, and how that moves forward. And I'm personally adamant that we cannot cause any issues for any existing residents. Period. I don't know how else to present it. Everybody in the area has some things to deal with in terms of traffic, has some things to deal with in terms of challenges moving around at certain times of the day. And where has this vision gone for, other than this parcel? You know, you want the apartments there, it's understood. What's next? What's going on in that area?
I can address that. Well, first off, we only own these 5 acres.
Yes.
We don't own the other 9 parcels that
Understood.
comprise the mall, so we can't in any way control or make any representations as to what may or may not happen there.
Right.
There's a presentation after us, and you'll probably learn some more there. As far as the text amendment, after review, it was determined that they were capping any one building at 150, and they capped the district at 300. So your concern about every one of these 9 parcels building 150 is extinguished by us going forward. There can be 150 more. As far as what the impact is on other properties, it depends on what they're currently used for. They could be used for a much more intensive fashion and then converted. But again, that's not us. We're just here for an existing office building that has sat vacant for 7 years and trying to breathe some new life into not only this building, but the area surrounding the mall and improve the conditions there. So we can represent to you what we're doing. We can agree to accept conditions as to what it's going to look like, the number of units, the amenities, and what we can do around there to improve it. That's all we can offer you, and we hope that's enough to get it started and continue to work with the mall owner on their redevelopment plans, because we support their efforts, they support our efforts. We're all trying to improve conditions for all the residents. But as far as the Arthur's Court, as was represented earlier, we have to work on the sewer flow. On that, we intend to.
Do you have anything? Okay. Personally, and the board will do whatever the board would like, I'm not comfortable proceeding. For reasons of the sewer, for reasons of traffic, I think the mall has some unique opportunities, especially with that additional parcel where the barracks used to be for Pennsylvania State Police. There's been discussions of that off and on over the years in terms of ingress, egress, additional traffic, a unified plan for the mall. I don't know if the intent is to try to turn the mall into more of a residence. I understand you said it was capped at 300. Seen variances and objections and lawsuits happen before. They have it. Why can't I have it? And things progress from that perspective. So while I appreciate your statement and I understand everything in black and white is appropriate to what you said, I'm a little concerned about the future. If the plan is for the mall to be more like Town Center over in King of Prussia, if that's the vision, show us the plans, show us how the traffic is going to not negatively impact the people who live here now, and how we can get there.
Gotcha.
This group and many on the township have worked on the 10-year, the 20-year plan I believe it's a 2040 plan that's we're working towards now, and that has some rather unique features in it, I think, and has some rather unique capabilities. You know, I for one have been advocating for a bridge across 320 since I don't know when, because the problem with traffic in this area is the rivers. It stops everything, keeps everything on either side of the bank, and everything gets congested. And all we need is, if people were here when the Fayette Street Bridge was being built, they understand what Conshohocken, what Plymouth, what Norristown, what Bridgeport, what the lower end of King of Prussia went through. It was hellacious. And then when the bridge was finally opened, it wasn't sufficient, so it was still hellacious. And people find ways, and people adapt, and I appreciate that. And I want to see them all succeed. That property was here before, and I believe all parties, planning, zoning, and council, voted in favor of the retirement home that was proposed there, which was something rather unique. Obviously, it didn't work, or it would be there. Understood. But at the same time, you know, we're willing to work. We're not a no development group. We understand where we live. We live in Plymouth Township, Northeast Extension, Turnpike, 476, Germantown Pike, Ridge Pike. We get it. We understand. But at the same time, we're trying to be mindful of who's here already. We're trying to make it a benefit for the existing residents, benefit for the businesses, that benefits the township. And that's what we're trying to work towards. I'm only speaking for myself.
Yeah.
If anyone would like to make a motion.
If I could just
Sure,
respond
hold on.
briefly.
Hold
I
on.
mean, your comment about who's here already, with all due respect,
Yes,
we're here already.
absolutely.
We're here in an office building.
Absolutely.
And most of your concerns and your questions about the future deal with the mall. And they're legitimate concerns. But we can't control the mall.
You
or
certainly
what they're
cannot.
gonna do or what they're not going to do. All that we can control is what we can do.
Mhm.
And we have attempted to lease that office building. Nobody's going to say we haven't
Nope.
tried to do it.
Not at all.
And it's sitting there, and the taxes you see in the fiscal currently are going to be substantially reduced through tax appeals that are pending. And sitting there the way it is, growing weeds and getting obsolete, is in no one's best interest. And our submission to you is support this project in the middle of the mall. It's going to reduce the traffic than a full operation of the office building. We need some sewer. We're not going forward until we get the confirmation, but it's only about 2,000 gallons a day. It's not sewer for an entire apartment building. We're going to clean up the green areas. We're going to fix up the pedestrian walks back there. We're going to do our part to make this better. And you're going to do your part in working with the mall to make the mall better. And if we all do our parts, I think when it comes together, it's going to be a great mall. The mall is the center of the town. We need the mall. It thrives there. I use the mall. It's changing over the years. But we think this apartment building that we're proposing now will coexist well with the mall and take a step forward to help the redevelopment of the mall and make it better for all of us. That's our pitch, and we respect your opinion. I know when we were here on the text amendment, you didn't support the text amendment. Council supported the text amendment, and based upon that, we're back here in front of you moving forward.
Absolutely.
If that didn't get passed, we wouldn't be here, but we're trying to fulfill our promise, because we made promises in the text amendment that we would move this forward, and we're trying to fulfill that. So that's what we're doing. We're committed to working with you on the land development. Brittany's comments on landscaping, Gregory's comments on access. We'll even work with the Preet and see if we can come up with some things. And we encourage you to go out there, and if you see some items, we're happy to work to try to implement them, particularly the pedestrian features, but there's something more than that. Rich will talk to Preet and try to work with them to make this work for everybody. But you know, our schedule is pretty aggressive. We assuming the sewer gets confirmation here, we're going to move forward this year and start renovations and clean that building up and get it up and occupied within probably 12 to 18 month construction endeavor, Rich, thereafter. So that's why we're here. We'll be back again on land development, and we hope we can all work together to make this a good project for the town.
Certainly, and that's all appreciated.
Yeah.
And just a reminder, this is an advisory body.
Yeah.
Whatever we advise, zoning and council can do what they like.
Yeah.
They can listen or they can not listen. And we're providing that advice. If you'd like to state your name for the record, sir?
Yeah, Mark Kaplan. I represent Creek, the owner of the mall. Rob, I have a couple of questions. We support something that would redevelop that building in the middle of the mall. I want everybody to understand that. How long has the mall, how long has the building been empty or almost empty?
Going back to 17 or 18, pre-pandemic.
So pre-pandemic. Okay, so now let me ask you this also, Rich. That building was built way back when.
But I assume it was built at the time the mall was built.
And it was.
What was it?
1968.
That was when it was built.
I'd like to know where the sewer, we talked about the sewer, and the township has told us when we were in our prior application that there's very little sewer. Do you know where the sewer from your building was going? Because I believe that Creek built the Arthur's Court line about 8 or 9 years ago. Was your sewer going through Arthur's Court? Do you know?
Yes, it is. The current configuration, the building as it is today, the sewage goes through.
But there has been no sewer going through that from your building pre-COVID, last 5 years.
Minimal, yes.
Right. So the calculations that were made a year ago or 2 years ago by the township engineer, your building would not have been contributing to the sewer that Alan Mason told us was going into the plant.
We don't know, Mark, because we don't know what assumptions he may or may not have made for the office building.
I understand. I didn't agree with his assumptions. I just want to keep it separate because
I have to look. I mean, your statement that wasn't really being used by us is true. What the assumptions they made,
I understand. I've looked at your land development plans that you submitted, and I'm curious, I couldn't tell. Are you decreasing the number of parking spaces on the overall mall at all?
Yes, we are losing 7 spaces within the development to add the ring garden. So 7 spaces.
Okay. I have no other questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Do we have a motion from the board?
I just want to make a comment. I guess I echo Vince's perspective there. I think it's in the best interest of our township to move ahead. But the mall has to find a new identity of what it's going to be 5, 10, 20 years from now. I mean, I think retail has already spoken where that's going. This may be a projected use at some point, but I think it has to be compatible and with infrastructure and the quality of life with our people that live here today. I mean, I've lived all my life in the township, okay, and it's important not that traffic is not going to get dramatically better, and I think that's, and not to put the onus just on this projected development, okay, but I think long-term, it's kind of hard to go backwards in Plymouth Township. I mean, we have a lot of things that are just out of the gate already. But I think the concerns that we have to be doubly cautious, I think, and I hope you appreciate that. I think it's a projected uses for this particular building, the Keystone building, that's referred to, okay, is something we should really consider. But I think it has to be done in tandem with and coordinated with whatever else is projected at the mall. I think we can approve this and then something else pops up over here. I think there's got to be a bigger plan and a vision. And I think that's what's probably holding, in my mind, would hold me back from going forward with that. It's not the individual project, but it's like a planning agency. Sometimes you have to have a township planning agency, but you have to have a regional planning agency. they impact one another, okay? And I think the overlapping impact is what's going to be the concern. Compounded, because we have another apartment building projected, everything else is double, triple.
But Anthony, how do we handle that? We're sitting- that is, we've been sitting here and they did
I
the
respect
Shake
that.
Shack, right? They doing a honey grove, like, great. You know, that's, we don't have any objection to what they're doing. We support them, but we can't control what they're putting in, or they can take something out of the mall tomorrow. All that we can do is contribute towards what we think is the best interest of the mall as a whole by taking an obsolete vacant office building and redeveloping it. So we just can't sit here for another 5 years.
I
So,
respect that. I mean,
yeah,
like I said,
that's all.
there's got to be some maybe dialogue between the township and the projected developers here to incorporate what is the final vision? Where do you want to go with this? Okay, because like I said, if you do this piecemeal, improve this piece and improve this piece, they may not be compatible. It may not be coordinated to have a situation that the township can accommodate.
But we can't steer the direction of the vision of the mall. We can steer, our vision is to take this building and make it better
The
for
township has
apartments.
the ability to slow the process anyway until it digests what is in the pipeline.
And to Tony's point, maybe, I don't know what conversations you've had with Bree, and maybe it's a joint proposal or some type of joint presentation of, hey, this is what we want to do, this is what we want to do, and the whole picture is presented at once instead of piecemeal. And maybe the township has to force that, or maybe you guys can come together and force the township to look at it that way.
But see, they have vacant ground they're redeveloping. We have an existing building that we have to put something in, and something either has to be office, age-restricted, or apartment. So those are our only three choices. Whatever they do, that's all we can do. We can't find office. We scoured for the age-restricted, and that didn't work. But we have apartments. So the only thing we can do is apartments. If somebody had another idea and said, great, we could do X with that existing building, we can't knock it down.
What happened with the age, if I can ask? Because I think we
They
were all
backed out.
in favor of that.
We were in favor of it too, so they just backed away. They
Did they say
decided
why?
that it wasn't economically.
Retrofitting was enormous, I was told.
Yep.
But it wasn't, I don't think that was the whole thing. We've done market studies too, because we wanted to go out to another developer, and unfortunately, they weren't positive.
Interesting.
Yeah. In fact, the pandemic actually kind of slowed that business down a little bit, because people realized that with a Ring doorbell, you can kind of keep your mom, and all these delivery services, you can keep your mom in the house, and you can see that the pharmacy came, and the groceries got delivered, and things like that, because people don't really want to go in those places.
So it was a combination, the saturation of the market, the COVID hitting,
Because
the
I
fit-out costs,
was
and
ready
the
to go out
rental
and try to find another
projections.
person who does that.
But, so Greg, back to that point, so those were the three options. And
No,
we can't turn it into a grocery store. So, you know, I'm being facetious, so
They don't
of
want
all
retail in
these,
there anyway.
when we marketed it, there is an interest, and Keystone has done the apartments, and it does work for the
I mean,
apartments.
I guess I'd like to see maybe, my biggest holdup is, well, one, it's all money, right? I'd love to see it turned into a town center. Somehow, I like to blow them all up and create a big opening in the middle and make it a walking place in town center and stores around it, and then an apartment complex would fit perfect. But my concern right now is traffic, and I would love to see if there's some way for you and Preet to come together and redesign the flow, maybe off of Hickory or something, and make one entrance in, one entrance out, and drive the traffic in a circle around the back and get away from that traffic light at by Dick's, or was it Landfall or whatever, coming in that way, which is just a nightmare. And not to go on record or anything, but I was against the Shake Shack, and I'm against expanding more, because that area is just nuts. Trying to get in and out. I refuse to go that way. I go around back every time to go in.
Okay.
I'll drive the extra mile around and deal with people than go in that front entrance.
I know, we were actually office there for a little while. I never used I think you're talking about the main light entrance, where
Yeah.
you used to call Dick's, right?
Shake Shack is six, yeah.
Yeah, so I was coming, I don't know what direction, I was coming from the highway, so I would make the right in where the
Luke
gas
Oil.
station, yeah. And I would always leave off of Hickory, and I think people who know the area would come in off of Hickory if they were coming the other direction.
And that's what I'm saying, if there was some way to
You
make
don't
like-
want to leave that exit. You
No, I don't want to alleviate, but I'm saying if there's some way to make.
You don't want to leave that way, because it's always a pain. Yeah.
Make an entrance on Hickory Road, and maybe that's where a sign or something is for the apartment complex, and you're forcing people to come in that way
I think
and
they
get
do
away
it.
from that traffic flow would make a lot more sense.
Again, Greg, as far as land development, if that's a suggestion that comes up, we'll go to Breeden and ask them. We can't commit to something we can't do. We can commit to you to work with on these improvements that we showed you, and we can certainly talk to Breeden about minor traffic-related modifications and signage, and we're happy to do it, but we can't redevelop their center.
And we would love to see a town center there too. So it would be a positive, so, for everybody. So I agree with you.
And I appreciate everything that's been said in the discussion. I think we have gone pretty far with that. However, we do need to make a recommendation on the matter before us. Does anyone have a motion? I'll make a motion that we not proceed at present based on reasons of traffic and sewer, that more information is needed for us to be comfortable moving forward with that. And we would like a discussion from the township on the vision for this parcel, because it is so important to the region. It is so important to the township. There are many people who come here for Whole Foods or for other specific places around the mall. It is a destination still, although certainly not what it once was. Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of not moving forward at present signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. And Monica's abstain. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Good, thank you.
We actually have a little bit of a presentation that we want to project
Okay.
behind you.
Okay.
So we may actually want you guys to come over here, and if I could have you go for just a few minutes. to set it up.
And in the meantime, I just want to remind everybody that this board adjourns at 9:30. We will not proceed beyond 9:30. We are a volunteer board. We all have day jobs that we need to get to tomorrow. At 9 o'clock, we will start moving towards a date certain to continue the meeting. Wanted to make certain everyone was aware of that.
I don't want to be here. Yeah, I think ours is less than 10 minutes.
Hopefully not that long.
Where?
He's working at Bluestone. And my wife is just going to them in the morning.
You got your projector here. You run through it. My seat to you, although you're not that seat. You gotta sit on that side, right? I can't sit. Okay, good to see you. Good to see you back.
Not too bright here. I might have to turn the lights down. Just promise me to stay awake.
Another year. They keep going up to. They seem confident. Well, that's what they compare.
I am impressed. What? Digital dexterity or whatever it is that you were doing. I didn't think that. If I had to do that, I'd bring my grandchildren in to put it together. Okay.
We might have to turn it So we have the presentation, the preliminary, okay, so this is the conference. What do you want the presentation?
Well, I don't know, I mean,
Yeah, we haven't gotten there. There it is. There it is. You speak and Mark will deliver it to you.
Ronnie, you probably know what's bouncing around in my head after all the presentations you've heard me make about the mall and what we just heard. Very intelligent in here. So let me ad-lib a little, because I came here to make a...
Okay, we're good.
I'll wait. I came here to make a technical presentation about our application. But your discussion at the end and your conclusion about Keystone's building leads me to, I want to make our technical presentation, but I want to address what you were all talking about at the end, about the mall. I've been involved for probably 7 or 8 years. We were here, it's got to be 7 or 8 years ago, when Corman came in. And Corman wanted to put a building in the same location that we're going to talk about tonight. Corman was turned down. That Corman building is now right down the street from my office on Union Meeting Road, probably twice the size and incredibly successful. Plymouth missed that opportunity in my mind. And to talk about what you gentlemen were talking about, missed an opportunity to add a lot of activity to the mall. The mall is, like all of these malls, particularly this one, is in a death spiral. And there's been all kinds of materials written. Do you know that we went through a whole process to build at the zoning hearing board a year and a half ago, and we made a very detailed presentation about the state of the mall, the state of malls overall, and how apartments are an essential part of the malls that are being saved all over the country. In order to make it a mixed-use facility, Corman was rejected 7 or 8 years ago. We were into the zoning hearing board on a similar application to this a year and a half ago. We were before the zoning hearing board for 10 months, 8-10 months, and to put a building in with 500 units. I asked a question and I'd like an answer. Were you gentlemen or ladies Were you aware of that? Because when I listened to the discussion about everybody working together and working with the township, when we've been trying to work with this township to save this mall for 7 or 8 years, and we have said, like everybody has said and done all over the country, you gotta put people there, and you gotta put apartments there. And I sit here and I listen, and you talk about the comp plan. The comp plan, and I bought the comp plan. The comp plan said there should be apartments here. I'll take it out, I'll show it to you. It says there should be apartments here. For all the reasons that you generally talked about. So the background of our presentation is that Preet has been trying for a long time, is spent an enormous amount of money in that mall to convert what it is. And we've got a big box in there that's some 300,000 square feet that is a white elephant. It's the same thing that you see in tons of malls all over the country. And this mall sits between, very close to King of Prussia, and on the other side, we have the Willow Grove Mall. There's really an argument that this mall never should have been built, and there's a whole story of how you had the Wanamakers and what was the other? No, it was Wanamakers and the other family. The Strawbridges, or the two families didn't talk to each other that owned the biggest department stores in the area. And so when the developers went to pair up with them, in Philadelphia, we got twice as many malls because of that. It's a long, long story. It's fascinating. We laid it all out, but we have what we have. I don't know whether you know this, but there was a tax appeal about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. And the settlement of the tax appeal with the school district was that there was a decrease in the taxes from the mall for close to $1 million because of the spiral, the death spiral. So my client's been trying to save it by doing the things that they've done. You know, you see it, we've all seen it, we all live here. This mall needs a component of apartments. And what Rich and Rob said about the apartments and no kids in it, and there's no effect on the school, they're 100% right. The statistics are all there. You don't have to go very far to see that. And you can't compare Sussex and Place One and Plymouth Hill to today's apartments that are from 700 square feet to 1,000, with those apartments that were built 40 years ago and have large 2 and 3 bedrooms. All those statistics are available. And I will say this to you about traffic. Preet, 8 or 9 years ago, spent millions of dollars to put all the improvements on Germantown Pike. The traffic at the mall between 2009 and now is down a huge percentage, 20-30%. I didn't know you were going to get into that, but we made a total presentation of that before the zoning hearing board. You can't say to the mall, you can't develop because there's traffic out there. It's not the mall's fault. The traffic from the mall has dropped significantly. So you keep the mall, whether it's Keystone's development or ours, locked in jail, so to speak, because of the rest of the traffic, most of which moves through Plymouth Township and doesn't stay here. There's got to be another attitude. There's got to be another attitude toward that. I wish that listening to you, and then you hear what we have to say, you go back to council and say, You've got to deal with Preedy. You've got to deal with Keystone. But that has not happened. The zoning got changed for that building twice. Once to do the assisted living facility, and when that was done, your zoning ordinance in the SC Shopping Center District allows a whole load of uses. And then it says, any other use of the same general category. And we came in with an application that said that our apartment building, that was a high-rise, would be of the same general category as the building that Keystone would have converted. And we're now before the Commonwealth Court. We've taken an appeal. We think we're going to win. But then the township changed the zoning again. Now there's an apartment building permitted there. And our application before the zoning hearing board is that the apartment we're going to show you tonight is of the same general category, and that's a very broad category in the law, as the apartments that Rich wants to build. And Seth Shapiro, our architect, we're going to put our floor plans up next to the floor plans that you saw. They are virtually identical. And our application to the zoning hearing board is we are of the same general category that is permitted under the ordinance. And our exhibit number 1 or number 2 will be the Bernardin plans that you saw. So maybe I'm being a little too emotional, but I've lived here for 50 years and I've been involved in this area way back when Allen Wood Steel went out of business. So I know Plymouth's history, and my office has been on Union Meeting Road or in Whitman for 40 years. And we need to do something with this mall. And we just can't get council to understand that the key to doing anything here is putting more people in that mall and turning it into exactly what you said, sir, a mixed-use development. It is what your comprehensive plan says, and it's what we want to do. But each time we come to the township, it's okay, do 150 apartments. Well, you can't build on a small piece of ground like we have 150 apartments and make it economically viable. Why? Because we have a small piece of ground, you have to have the parking, and the parking has to be in a structured parking facility, and that drives the costs way up. And the magic number is somewhere around 300, and it's been demonstrated all over. So that's my background to what we're going to show you now. And I'm going to turn it from the overall, the background, really to Seth to show you our presentation. We start before the zoning hearing board, I think it's the 15th, we're in for, as you understand, it's a special exception. And like Keystone's conditional use, it's a permitted use if you meet the objective criteria of the ordinance. Side yard setbacks, all of those things that I'm sure Keystone's plan does and our plan does. And we'll go through ours and we'll show you what we propose, and then we'd be more than willing to have a conversation of how we get to where you suggested, because we have not been able to do it for the last 8 years.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Seth Shapiro. Shapiro is a Southeast Pennsylvania pronunciation.
Did I call you wrong?
My parents are from New York, Brooklyn, so it's Shapiro. But that's a whole other thing. And in fact, it's only Shapiro in the 5 counties around Philadelphia.
Okay.
So very strange. But anyway.
But you're in an Italian neighborhood, so why the hell are you going?
I grew up in an Italian neighborhood. So I grew up in King of Prussia. So you're either Catholic or Jewish. Anyway, so I am a principal and director of urban design for Barton Partners, Architects Pioneers. We actually did Park way back when. And what I want to show you, this is going to be very short because there's only about 7 or 8 slides. I want to show you a little bit about this proposal, but then we're going to end on a slide that I think will elicit some discussion. So I'm going to just go real quick here. This, what's up here right now, is the overall sketch plan that we have submitted, and as Mark mentioned, that will be in front of the zoning hearing board in a few weeks. This next slide is a zoom in of that application, but it might be easier to look at it like this. This is actually the proposal that we have for the IKEA office parcel, for that old IKEA office building. And what this is what we call the typical Texas donut, Dallas donut. You see them in King of Prussia, where you have a structured deck and then a building that wraps that deck and creates an internal courtyard that's highly amenitized. And that's how you sort of drive the rents, and you really get this sort of the high-end young professionals that love these types of buildings. What you see here is the ground floor with the pink area, which are the amenity areas that open out onto that courtyard. And then you have the units in the yellow that surround that parking deck. Above that are the typical floors. You'll notice that there's a floor that disappears in front of the Whole Foods. It's because there's actually a grade change there, so we're built into the hill. And then this is what the 4 floors above that. So it's a 4-story building. It would appear as a 4-story building from the Whole Foods, and then 5 stories down closer to the turnpike.
Would you spend a little more time on the amenities, the amenity floor?
Sure. So the way these buildings work, there's generally a rule of thumb that we use. Actually, let's go back this way. Is that we like to provide between 35 and 50 square feet of internal amenity space per unit. So for a 300-unit apartment building, that works out to about, I guess, between 12 and 15,000 square feet of amenity space. And in those spaces, there are club rooms, there's a lot of office share space that we get, like little conference rooms that we do now. We used to do theaters, no one does them anymore because everybody has a 70-inch plasma TV. We do what would be called like a pub room. There's actually a standalone clubhouse at Park that has all these amenities in it. They all have pools, they all have gyms. So they really are highly amenitized, and it's almost like resort living is what we like to call it. So this building it has that. There's a leasing center in there. It's the main front door, and it's that area in pink where the sort of the entrance to the building would be. So just to give you some scale, so this is the building at 4 stories and 5 stories. This is actually a view of the building.
Let me turn the light out.
Yeah, sure, they're good now. Great, perfect. So this is actually a view of the building as if you were in the Whole Foods parking lot. Actually, you can see the Keystone building off to the left, pre-renovation. Sorry, I didn't have your wrong. Yeah, okay. So that's it. So as you see, it would present actually as 4 stories, although actually the Whole Foods parking lot's a little bit higher. Better view here. This is sort of at that approach, and you can see actually because of the way it's built into the hill, it's only slightly taller than the Whole Foods, and the main entry would be off to the right here. We haven't developed this in a lot of detail yet because it's a little bit early in the process for that. But what we can tell you is that this would be a typical 1-bedroom unit. And if you zoom in to, I think, what Bernardin is doing and what Bernardin is proposing with Keystone, same kind of unit plan, 24-foot wide, 1-bedroom. It's about 750 square feet. Again, very typical for the apartments that you see in King of Prussia and the new stuff.
And no kids.
And no kids. That's the other thing, is this building is about 70% studios and 1-bedrooms and about 30% 2-bedrooms. And then if we did a 2-bedroom, and we are proposing 2 bedrooms, this is what you see. It's actually set up as a roommate situation. So it's almost like you have 2 primary suites, with walk-in closets and bathrooms. And one of the newer things that we're doing is that in the 2 bedrooms and some in the ones, we have these little work area, like little desk nook as well.
How many square feet is that?
So this, I believe, is 1150. And again, as Mark said, with these modern apartments, they are much smaller than those other older apartments. I read someplace, and I don't have the exact numbers, but they built something like 3,000 apartments in King of Prussia, and I think there are 17 school kids in that 3,000 apartments. So, be that as it may. What we wanted to leave you, though, was with this, right? This, I think, is the important thing. And we actually, that drawing on the right is actually a year old. But we've never actually had the opportunity to really show what's going on. Is we had started to think about the larger master plan for...
The time is now 8:30 and the community center will be closing in 30 minutes. Again, the time is now 8:30 and the community center will be closing in 30 minutes.
I stand corrected. Our old building didn't close at 9 o'clock, so we do have a hard deadline.
Okay, well, there you go. Well, we are done. Just saying, on the left is what the mall is today.
Well, wait, there's one other aspect of this that I want you to go through. So the plan on the right, I heard what everybody said about getting in and out of the mall. And we did not come here to make a traffic presentation tonight or to show you
the improvements that we're showing on this.
Yeah, so there are...
Here, I'm going to go around the side.
We have a whole plan that shows the traffic improvements. So
here,
let's, wait,
here.
so point to the first one, the right in, that you said you come in and then you sneak out the back like I do. So, so come
right
up here,
right,
where the gas station is, that entrance would be redone so that it will be easier to get in. Right now, you've got to come up the hill and make a quick right. So that would be reconfigured. And then as you come down that road, there would be all types of traffic controls so that you're not going back and forth. And then it would come down to the apartments here. And coming out of the apartments, you have, nobody's going to go out toward, once they live there, they're not going to go back and go out on Germantown Pike because you've got to get through too much. There is the trail all the way around that there's never any traffic on, and we would do improvements. There are improvements that's where the bus comes out. And the bus causes a problem there with the turning. So there are traffic improvements that would be made there. But now on the main entrance, yeah, I really need my traffic engineer here. But the problem, if I can articulate it, is the traffic gets backed up because traffic coming in, I believe, turns left. Which one is?
No, this is actually, we're proposing a free right there.
Yeah, the free rights so that would all open up. We demonstrated how we can improve the traffic there tremendously. That would be part of the overall improvements. And then Seth, walk us a little bit through what you're proposing in what was the parking lots. But again, we would need Keystone to agree. We would need probably Boscov's to agree. There are so many cross easements on this property, and whoever said it before is right. Everybody involved, including the township, have got to be involved so that this can be made to be viable. Go ahead, Seth.
Again, the idea behind this, and it's not fully vetted, it's really conceptual, is to try to reorganize this sort of mess of parking lots that come together at all these strange angles, to try to make some sense of it, and also make it much more pedestrian friendly. Right now, if I was at the Whole Foods and I decided I had enough good food and I wanted to eat something bad and I wanted to go to Shake Shack, which I had for dinner tonight, I would get in my car and drive over there. And that to me that's a planning failure. So the idea behind this is make it pedestrian friendly. Don't just make it for cars. But when it comes to vehicles, do things that make it safer. For example, as Mark mentioned, that's one thing. But when you come in here right now, and it's hard to see in this drawing, but there's all these offset intersections that create lots of different conflicts. We're trying to clean that up with this plan. Now, this plan probably results in a net reduction in parking spaces, but we think, with PREET, we would have to work with them, but we think that's okay because there's a lot of empty pavement there now. So that's the idea. This is like a broad concept. This is the start of what you guys just sort of kind of asked for, which is this overall vision master plan. In this plan, PREET is actually exploring sort of turning the interior of the mall, taking that and changing the use in there as well, from retail to something like a life sciences. There's been a lot of examples of that where the interiors of malls are converted. You don't have any tenants in mind, they haven't shopped it, but the idea is that now you go from this single-use property, this single-use enormous property, to something that has retail, office, residential. It starts to evolve into that mixed-use town center. And it's something that's going to take a lot of time and a lot of effort and will evolve over time. But what it's been doing now is stagnated.
And that's exactly what this document, the 2040 plan, done in 18 or 19,
But
says.
the last thing I want to leave you with this, and then we can have that discussion because we have 23 minutes, is that Mark is right about the sort of the intensity of the uses in residential. 150 residential units does not a town center make. It has to be a 24-hour sort of center of activity. And it takes a lot. King of Prussia, they did 3,000 units. Now, that's not really mixed use, it's multi-use because all the uses are kind of separated. But it still works from a pedestrian standpoint. So that's what we wanted to leave you with, this sort of idea of this vision that, again, we have not shared with anybody. This drawing, again, is about a year old. But it's something that internally we worked on, and we wanted to actually sort of put it up today to say, we're not just plopping a building down. We're thinking about this in the larger context of this, and I'm hoping that Keystone would agree that this could benefit them as well, even though it's adding more units, but I don't think there'd be any problem leasing 600-700 units at this property.
The comprehensive plan talks about the township needing, I believe, 3,700 more residential units over a period of time. I may not have that number right, but it's on that order of magnitude. I think this was done in coordination, the Montgomery County Planning Commission. Now, what better place is there to build more residential units than on a piece of property that the comprehensive plan calls the traffic center or the transportation center of the township. You don't have to tear up one more green space as if we have very many left. This is the ideal place for additional apartments. And Seth is right. I represented the developer of the old golf course that is now the village at Valley Forge. And there it is incredible how many people, there are 3,000 new units there, and they're virtually all rented. It demonstrates a change in the demographics of this country. And we've got to realize it. Our kids are getting married much later. There's a whole group that from 20 to 30 or 34 that were not renters before. There's the old people like me that are still walking around and want to go to Florida in the winter and come back here because their kids are still here. And that's what Corman is doing. You don't have to believe me. Go into Corman's building and talk to anybody. What do they do there? There's no kids there. It's It's the young people, what they call dinks, dual income, no kids. It's, look, who would have ever expected a big apartment like that on Union Meeting Road? You're right, we've all lived here a long time. We never would have guessed that in a million years. Corman had an apartment-like complex up Jolly Road before you get to, for years and years. And they saw the need. Park, look at the way Park rented. Park rented so fast, and that was even before the economy got good. And it's not bad people, it's not transients, it's people, it's what our demographics are changing to. It's no longer that you buy a house and that's your pension plan. People are moving. You don't want to hear my speech, you see it, I'm sure you understand. So when you say that it's going to cause too much traffic, it's going to cost too much sewer, I could argue with that forever. But your comprehensive plan acknowledges the need for it, and the numbers are there in black and white. All right,
That's it.
yeah, I made my speech. I made this speech a number of times. So we would love to have a discussion with you about this. We are going to the zoning hearing board. We're going to put on our case. We don't need you to make a recommendation for or against, but maybe it's a recommendation to the township to put together some kind of group so that we can talk about the viability of the mall and how what you all talked about in Keystone's presentation can come to be. Because right now, we're trying to do it, Richie's trying to do it, and there really is no affirmative help from the township. And it's just getting worse. That mall is not going to get any better. So I thank you for listening to my sermon.
Thank you very much. Shall we move back? Would this be easier?
You want to turn this down? I'll turn it down because it's not in your face.
No worries.
You don't want to have it in your eyes?
Confess, we'll confess.
What's the size of this site?
Of the IKEA parcel?
Well, here's what I've got. These are county records. This is one tax parcel, this is another tax parcel. That's what this called. But your proposal is in front of the general cinema building and runs into the overflow parking from Well, this is old label from the county records. This is history.
You know what, the numbers are for should be here.
See, this is where you follow that, right? And if you do that, what I'm saying is, this line up here goes into, by county records tax parcel, sold as everyone needs.
Can you get a text yet?
Yeah,
it's not.
And then
Yeah.
they have it here, they sold multiple.
Unfortunately.
3.57 acres off of that, so that came off of this piece here.
Big difference in the.
I was just trying to see where, delineate where. the-
I never got to experience the auditorium, so.
Movie theater.
No.
So I know they're flattening the floor,
Oh,
they are.
so it's no longer going to be on an incline.
That's what I'm.
And apparently, I guess these guys sat up high.
Yeah.
That's not going to be the case anymore.
No, that's,
Okay, and you follow, look at, see this offset?
Yeah.
And then turn
They moved an
the-
elevator.
This line.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, and where is that now? That's your office up here.
There now, right?
You see, because
Yeah,
this
so the
only goes
police are,
77.9
well,
feet off this.
code enforcement works in a room over across the lake.
Here's the cinema. and see, that's
Here,
what's
yeah.
To the front of the cinema.
So administration moved to our old area.
No, that's where.
Their area got done, so they moved back.
Well, on this side of that.
All right.
The police are in our area.
If we could,
Right.
Bunch of flip-flopping.
well, I want to make sure that whatever conversation we're having is getting caught on record, and that we're able to proceed, because apparently the building's closing, so we haven't been here before in this building in this situation. So thank you, Lonnie. Do you have anything?
I don't.
Thank you, sir. Brittany.
I presentation, so this is my first time seeing a presentation. What I heard was that there's been a lack of communication. What I've heard is that there's been a lack of communication among the 9 parking lots in the township, and I think it would be great.
The time is now 8:45. The community center will be closing in 15 minutes. At this time, you should be making your way towards the exit.
If everybody could come together in a perfect world and have a master plan submission, and I know that is like pie in the sky.
Tell that to council.
I think that would be, I think that's where this should go, and I would love if all the owners in the township would visit that idea, because a master plan is really what I think is needed and would be the solution to everyone's problem. That's my comment.
Thank you, Brittany. Tony?
That's why I think I expressed the same thing. We would be remiss, I think, to choose one site over another. I think it has to be done in tandem, and the big picture of where the mall is going to go. It's going to have to create a new identity, as Mark said, with demographics changing as they are. The mall is going, I don't have any objection to apartments, okay? It's the intensity of the apartments and planning, okay, with the infrastructure for our township. As far as sewage and all that, that's calculations by engineers. But I think in our comprehensive plan, I'm familiar with that, I was on that committee, okay, it has to redefine itself, the mall. It needs an identity, and it's an important part of our township. It's a tax rateable that supports a lot of our services. So it's a balancing act, but I think there has to be some conversation between Keystone and Priott and coordinate this, because, like I said, it's important to the township too, though, so the township has to step up.
Well, but right now, what you didn't hear was that the ordinance that the township created to allow Keystone to convert that building, if you read the rest of that ordinance, it's quite frankly designed so that we can't build anything, and if we somehow build something, it would be limited to 150 units. And that simply is not happening.
Well, I don't want to extend the conversation. We had this conversation when you came in with 502 units, and you made the comparison that assisted living facilities and motels were within that zoning category in the township. Although I mentioned to you that there's the intensity of an assisted living facility, you won't find 502 assisted living units in Montgomery County. And then also an assisted living facility doesn't have anywhere the trip generation that you're going to have from an apartment or residential apartment. I think that's the push line is like, what is that balancing act?
Well, now you've got an apartment building.
Well, that wasn't in our discussion.
I agree.
Then.
I agree.
Right.
So now we're talking, when you get down to it, we're talking, is it 300 units or is it 150 units on our property? We can't, we've been through that ordinance. We can't fit into all the machinations that are put into that ordinance. I don't think that Keystone did it. But
It would actually be limited physically to 50 units if you actually follow the letter of the law.
Yeah, so-
It's just- that's not tenable.
I understand.
we criticize the ordinance because of what it tries to do to us. We don't criticize the ordinance for what it allows Rich Gottlieb to do. We think that's exactly what should happen. We'd love to have, you said it, 225 beds of people in that mall. It would help.
Anything else, Tony?
No, I'm good.
Thank you, sir. Brittany?
No, I don't have anything.
Thank you, sir. Monica?
Just a comment, if like anything you can do to increase the capacity of the traffic at that main entrance would be very appreciated.
Yeah, we can. We can fix it. I wish I had those drawings that I could show you, but it's obvious that with one turn is screwing that up because it's stopping the traffic going out. And the reconfiguration that Joe DeSantis, our traffic engineer, did allows, and then we did simulations of the traffic on Germantown Pike before and after.
That's it.
Thank you. Michael?
No, just echo what Brittany said and Tony, that, I think we need a comprehensive plan. I think it would be ideal for everybody to get together and, create some type of pathway forward where it really makes sense for that site. I mean, I certainly, understand where you're coming from. I think it would be great to have something there that would create a vibrancy to the mall, because it's definitely not going in the right direction. And that it certainly would be for apartments and being part of that. But it's, it's got to be done in a way that, creates something valuable to the township and doesn't create issues with traffic and sewage and all the things that we talked about tonight.
Let me make one other comment that I think you'll find interesting. So I think Preet now owns 17 or 18 malls. He owns some malls down outside of Washington. And when we were going through the other application, I was working with the director of development. And he said to me, "Mark, you're not going to believe this. I got a call from, I think it was Springfield, Virginia, from the township there. They want us to come down. They want to drop the parking requirement. They want to give us more density. They want to make sure that the mall is viable." And that was repeated in not a lot, but a number of other jurisdictions. And that's what we need. That's what we need. We need, maybe it's a committee, maybe it's the planning commission, but there has to be a recognition that this is going the wrong way. And you can't just sit there and say, no more apartments, because apartments are an absolute essential component of making this live, work, and play mixed-use community.
Right. Yeah, and I don't think, I'm probably speaking for most everybody up here, I don't think we're against it. We just want to see it done in a responsible manner.
Well, maybe you're the vehicle to do that. Maybe it's the planning commission, and, you gotta, the council members have got to be involved, because we can't be talking and then it's obvious listening to you. You didn't hear what was going on when we were before council or before the zoning board.
Thank you. Great.
Nothing additional, it's been all stated.
All right. We have approximately 5 minutes. Anything else?
I'm good.
Okay. Yep. All right. So being mindful of the fact that you're presenting to the zoning hearing board on the 15th, this board has listened to things before. We've listened to concept plans before. We have been open to that in the past. We're open to that now. I understand that that's not possible at present. So I'll propose a motion in terms of consistency of how we viewed the parcel before, and also the fact that there's active litigation ongoing, that we not approve this to move forward for those reasons, as well as reasons of a unified traffic and unified sewage water plan to prevent issues from the area. That's what our advocacy is for zoning and council, and it's their choice to do what they like with that information.
I understand that. Please do another resolution, call it whatever you want, to take what all of you said and say to council, this is what we need to do.
That will be in the meeting minutes that council will receive.
Please.
There's a motion. Do we have a second? Second. All those in favor of not
The
moving
time is
forward
now
by
8:55,
saying
and the
aye?
community center will be closing in
Aye.
5 minutes. At this time, you
Thank
should
you.
be making your way towards
One
the
point,
exit.
can I make a motion that we recommend to council? I'd like to make a motion that we recommend the council to try to bring this side together and formulate an overall game plan for the use of the mall.
Do we-
Recommend some kind of committee
Well, I'm recommending council take that action. They can decide committee, not committee.
Do we have a
how they
second?
want to go.
I'll second that.
Okay, Brittany, second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All in favor? Thank you so much. We are adjourned. Hopefully we won't get locked in.